Hi, I just want to talk about what's going on currently with the House case. Right now it's the end of May, and Judge Wilkens asked the attorneys
to address student athletes who have been cut due to roster limits. Specifically, she asked that current student athletes be grandfathered in, particularly those who had been cut because of the roster limits.
And after the April 7th hearing, that's what the attorneys were asked to do, and they were to meet with the mediator. So what happened? What happened was the attorneys did meet, and they did come up with a compromise to submit to Judge Wilkens. I have some concerns about what the compromise was. The compromise is this: any student athlete that is grandfathered in would, if a university designated it this way, would be grandfathered in. However, what the attorneys did was they decided that the universities would be able to voluntarily grandfather in the athletes who had been cut prior to the April 7th hearing or even subsequent to that. The problem with that is the word voluntary. Judge Wilkens specifically told everyone that she wanted them to grandfather in student athletes who had been cut under the roster limits. She did not want any student athlete to lose an opportunity. So the problem with them making it voluntary, that was their compromise between the plaintiffs and the defense counsel on the House case, is that truthfully, an athlete who's in the portal, if a school decides not to grandfather in because it's voluntary, they again lost their spot. Okay, so part two it is, well, anybody who's in the portal that was cut because of roster spots, if they are picked up at a new school, they can be grandfathered in there as well. The problem with that is there's kids in the portal right now who were cut for roster spots that might not get picked up from another school. So they're still out in the cold with no place to go. And that's something that I don't think Judge Wilkens is going to be too happy about when she specifically told them she didn't want any kids
losing a roster spot.
So what does this look like? Well, if she doesn't approve the final settlement with these changes on the roster limits and roster spots, then it's going to go to trial. Okay. However, if she does approve the settlement as is, this is what it's going to look like for universities. Universities will have to, one, designate who they cut prior to this settlement, which this goes back to the preliminary agreement was back in October. She then had another hearing on April 7th where she didn't confirm the settlement and told them they needed to make some changes. So any kids between, I'd say, October, or any athletes between October and right now that were cut for the purpose of the roster limits that they have imposed in this case, those student athletes would be grandfathered in if you as a university choose to grandfather in those spots. Okay, what is that going to look like? Well, as an athletics department, you're going to have to go through all of your sports and determine, okay, who was cut for roster spots purposes, and then you have to designate them as somebody who was cut for roster spot purposes. If they were not cut for spot purposes, then obviously they are not grandfathered in. But for those kids that they cut, if they decide not to take them back, they then would be grandfathered into another school. Now, what this does protect is, let's say a student athlete did go in the portal, was put in the portal because of the roster spot limits, and is now at a new school, they would be grandfathered in at the new school as well. I think that's maybe what the attorneys were thinking. But I think what they have forgotten about is all the kids who have been cut who don't have another spot, because there's still only so many spots. So I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe she'll rule this week. I don't know. There's also been some other briefs that have been submitted by people who represent athletes who have been cut. And one of their suggestions is they thought, I know one attorney did suggest that Judge Wilkens stay the entire settlement, even if she approves it, until everything on appeal has been handled, because obviously there's a group of attorneys that intend on appealing this settlement no matter what. So will she stay the settlement, waiting for any appellate responses? Will she approve it, not stay it, so that people can move forward and start implementing it? Or will she not approve it at all, and then this will go to trial? So it's certainly been a muddy situation. Hopefully it gets resolved sometime soon. So thanks for listening. This is Jill Baxter on Born to Be a Sports Agent. Please go to my website at jillmcbridebaxter.com and get on my email list. Specifically on there, it asks you, are you a coach? Are you aspiring sports agent or athletic director or athlete? And you can sign in under those things, and you can get more information that I only give to my email subscribers. So I hope you're doing great, and I hope this all works out.